So we're going to go ahead and jump in and start looking at enterprise agility. And I think the place to start really is to ask, what is it that's driving enterprise agility? And in a nutshell, it's advancing technology and changing business processes. We see things like the most recent publication from the World Economic Forum, where they said that the rapid pace of social and technological change across the world is driving the need for agile government. They characterize it as the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, and they conclude that ultimately the ability of government systems and public authorities, and I would add for big businesses too, to adapt will determine their survival. It's a matter of an existential threat in the environment if you're not learning to be adaptable and responsive to the interests and the needs and the wishes of your customers, your constituents, your taxpayers, your voters, your investors, your benefactors. It's true across the world. And the reason I feel very strongly about this is that it's not just the World Economic Forum that's saying stuff like this. The well-respected industry authority, the Chaos Report, the most recent version, the Chaos 2020 report, which, as you know, has been published biannually. That's every 2 years since 1994, and is based on deep, credible research, right, with a sample size of 5,000 projects and deep research into what makes them succeed or fail. They've been charting that since, like I said, since 1994, and assessing where the industry is going, and with uncanny accuracy, forecasting what's next. Well, when they published the Chaos 2020 report, they announced that it was the final Chaos 2020 report. Well, and of course, because of the revenue stream that was for the Standish Group, I was a bit skeptical that it would be the last one. You see, my clients have been buying it for years to advise and to guide their strategic planning. And so I've of necessity been buying a copy and reading it every 2 years myself. And at $675 a copy, it's a significant revenue generator. So when they said it was the last one, I thought, okay, they'll change the name and it'll become something else, but it'll be essentially the same thing. Well, they have not. That was the last one. They haven't replaced it with something else. And I think what drove that decision was they did a major piece of research and added an epilogue to this final report. And they looked at 60 years of data. And reviewing that 60 years of data, they identified that there had been 3 major evolutionary periods. And they were saying, much like the World Economic Forum said, right, that we are at the dawning of a new evolutionary period is what they called it. So they said, right, from 1960 to 1980, we had the Wild West period. And for those of us who were around the business world or in IT at that time, it was the Wild West. We didn't know if token ring or Ethernet would be the dominant topology. We didn't know whether mainframes were going to be displaced by midis and minis, and then all of a sudden this new thing called a personal computer starts emerging. And companies start pouring tens of millions of dollars into technology, into information technology infrastructure in order to establish a competitive advantage. And that brought about the dawning of the second period they identified, the waterfall period, which essentially existed from 1980 to 2000. And for many of you, it won't surprise you that was during the peak years of growth for PMI. PMI was founded in 1969. And was moving along, and then lo and behold, around 1980, the growth rate really started to rise, and in the 1990s spiked to where now there are over 1 million PMP credential holders globally and 400,000 members of PMI. And so they called it the waterfall period, right? The traditional linear approach to managing projects became the de facto standard, the best practice, because companies were pouring tens of millions and even hundreds of millions of dollars into IT projects and initiatives, again, to try and establish an advantage or to hold off, to defend a position in the marketplace. and they were unhappy with the failure rates that were being proven and diagnosed and charted by the chaos reports research beginning, as I said, 1994. Well, those of us who've been active in the marketplace recently won't be surprised that the third evolutionary period that they identified and defined was the Agile period, right, from 2000 to 2020. The Agile Manifesto came out in 2001. Now, given there were Agile methods before the manifesto, right? We had RAD, RUP, Spiral, a whole variety, but the environmental demands, the marketplace demands, I'll call it the clock speed, if you will, using an IT analogy, the clock speed of the marketplace didn't demand the use or need for Agile methods. But by 2000, that had really happened. So the Agile Manifesto comes along, the Scrum Alliance is born, and Scrum becomes an everyday word and becomes a major factor in our thinking about how we manage programs. Now, it wasn't that the intellectual property in the manifesto or provided by the Scrum Alliance was somehow superior to the prior intellectual property. It's just they had the blessing, the good fortune of being in the right place at the right time as the market turned. Well, here we are now in the early 2020s, and the Chaos Report research indicates we have entered and are entering a fourth evolutionary period. Again, much like the World Economic Forum said about this being a fourth industrial revolution. And that new revolution is being driven, according to the research in the Chaos Report, is being driven by the concept of infinite flow, right? The idea that value streams are core in terms of managing for success. And they're core whether you're managing a program to provide warfighter technology to keep them alive and return them safely, or whether you're developing a program to attract the next wave of buyers' dollars to your organization, or you're trying to attract the voter segments that you need to become dominant in the political arena. And so these value streams, right, really that whole line of thought really aligns with infinite flow, but infinite flow goes beyond that. It begins looking at business pipelines, which are kind of like product pipelines. And so the project management body of knowledge, which was so big during the waterfall period, continued to be foundational in the Agile period, is now being maybe supplanted, maybe challenged by the product management body of knowledge. And so the idea of process flows and product deliveries and anticipating the next thing that a client wants, the next thing that a taxpayer, constituent, or customer wants, it becomes very important. We look at, getting as quickly to market as possible with a version 1.0 of a product so that we can learn from market feedback how viable it is, or what additional features it needs or changes it's going to have in order to sustain its viability or extend its viability. And the reason there's this anxiousness, this anxiety, this drive to be first to market is proven out from the product management body of knowledge, research and the like, in that first to market has something like an 8-to-1 advantage over second to market or third to market or fourth to market. So there's very significant and powerful reasons why agility is tied to the existential durability, the existential livelihood of any organization, whether it be a nation state or an enterprise. And so, right, why is enterprise agility so important now? Well, again, government and big business, the landscape has changed so much during this last 20-year evolutionary period. Existential threats, which can be thought of as threats to national security at the government level, threats to competitive viability or financial viability